I found the Ossian on a Tuesday. Not the ship itself, we never found the ship. What I found was a line of text in a Valeth Sovereignty Asset Catalog transmission, buried in 17 hours of relay traffic that my station had been pulling from their secondary logistics net for the better part of 8 months. Hull designation OSS 7441C, registry flag, human. Classification, decommissioned vessel, unclaimed remnant. Catalog status, closed. I stared at that line for a long time before I pulled the associated file. The Ossian was a survey ship. 43 meters, 6-person crew quarters expanded to hold 11, out of the Ceth Corridor mapping project. She'd departed Marrow Station 11 months prior with 61 people aboard, geologists, cartographers, 3 medics, a cook named Petra Vane who'd apparently been on every mapping run out of Marrow for 14 years. The Sovereignty's catalog entry noted her hull in good condition at time of salvage. It noted her equipment inventory. It listed recovered materials by mass and type. It did not list 61 names. I flagged the entry for Commander Riel Osk, who flagged it for Admiral Convale, who was on my deck 17 minutes later. The Admiral had a specific way of standing when she was making a decision, very still, weight distributed evenly, like she was rooted to the deck plating, and she stood that way for a long time, reading the catalog entry on my secondary screen. She didn't say anything for the first 2 minutes. Neither did I. There wasn't anything useful to say. She asked me once whether the vessel classification system the Sovereignty used was standard across all their catalog stations. I told her it was, the same intake codes, the same disposition flags, the same archive structure, replicated at every station in the Ceth Corridor. She asked me how many catalog stations were active in the Ceth Corridor. I told her 3. She nodded once and left my station without another word. The Meridian Strike Group launched 7 hours later. 340 warships. I was signals and communications officer aboard the flagship Cairns Shore, which meant I sat at the same console for the entire crossing, monitoring Sovereignty relay traffic, watching their catalog chatter tick past on my secondary screen while the fleet moved through the dark. I had pulled every record associated with hull designation OSS 7441C and loaded it into a secondary file on my console. I kept it open. I'm not sure why. It seemed like the right thing to have in front of me. The Sovereignty's traffic changed character about 40 minutes before we reached the Ceth Corridor boundary. Their long-range detection net had us. The chatter went from routine catalog processing, batch entries, clearance codes, materials mass tallies, to priority relays between the 3 stations, and then to a direct line to what I assessed as their sector command node. They were requesting instructions. The response came back in 17 seconds. I recorded it, flagged it, and routed it to Admiral Vale. She read it. She said, "They're asking us to file a salvage declaration." I said yes. She said, "For the fleet." I said yes. The Sovereignty's classification protocol was automatic. Any unregistered vessel group entering their operational corridor without a prior arrangement was subject to cataloging as an unclaimed remnant pending disposition review. 340 warships, in their system, were an asset to be processed. Admiral Vale looked at the bulkhead for a moment. Then she said, "Open a channel to all 3 stations. Full broadcast, their frequencies." I opened it. She said, "This is the Earth vessel Cairns Shore, commanding the Meridian Strike Group. Hull designation OSS 7441C. Catalog entry filed by the Valeth Sovereignty, date of entry 11 months and 4 days prior to this transmission. 61 crew. We are not filing a salvage declaration. We are here to close a record." She nodded at me. I closed the broadcast channel. The Sovereignty's relay traffic spiked hard. The sector command node was issuing orders. I watched the pattern and worked out what they were doing, rotating their station defense grids, charging rail systems, signaling what looked like a reserve patrol element somewhere deeper in the corridor. They had, by my count, roughly 96 warships spread across the corridor's operational range, some of which were already on vector toward us. It was not nothing. It was also not 340. Admiral Vale gave the order at the boundary and I stopped monitoring the Sovereignty's traffic and started doing my actual job, which was keeping our own communications clean, logging the sequence, making sure the record of what we did and why was documented in the kind of detail that would survive a review. There are people who think signals work during an action is passive. Those people have never tried to maintain a clean transmission log while 340 ships are maneuvering. The first catalog station went dark in 11 minutes. The Sovereignty had built them well, hardened superstructure, good redundancy on the power systems, and a defense grid that was genuinely trying. We dismantled the grid first, then the relay node, then the catalog processing core. Precise. Methodical. No civilians aboard, which the Sovereignty's own staffing manifests, which I had also pulled, confirmed. The station had a crew of 43 logistics administrators. We gave them 18 minutes and a clear corridor on beacon frequency and their evacuation pods cleared before the processing core went down. I logged the first station closure. Then I opened the catalog file again and looked at the Ossian's entry. Hull designation OSS 7441C, catalog status, closed. The second station took 16 minutes. Their defense grid was more aggressive, they had pulled the reserve patrol element in, and there was a period where our forward elements were being pushed. Admiral Vale shifted weight to the corridor's southern approach and the grid folded. We took 11 hull breaches across the strike group. 7 people. I logged their names while the station's relay went dark. The third station was the largest. It was also the one I cared about most, because a subsequent pull of the Sovereignty's catalog architecture had told me that the OSS 7441C entry was stored in the third station's master archive, the original file, not a relay copy. The Sovereignty's catalog system used a distributed processing model but a centralized archive. Everything eventually lived in Station 3. We reached it 40 minutes after the second one went dark. The Sovereignty's sector command node had gone quiet by then. I did not know if that meant they had run out of things to say or simply decided there was no point in saying them. Their remaining patrol elements had withdrawn to a holding position beyond the corridor's far boundary. They were watching. I logged it. Admiral Vale opened the channel again before the order went out. She said, "Hull designation OSS 7441C, survey vessel Ossian. Marrow Station Registry. 61 crew, Petra Vane, cook. Devlin Marsh, geological survey lead. Isara Pont, cartographer, first class." She went through all 61 names. It took 4 minutes and 22 seconds. I had the list on my screen and I followed along, making sure she didn't lose her place, though she didn't need me to. She had read them before giving the order for the first station and the second station too. I had not realized she intended to read them 3 times until she started reading them the first time and I understood that she was going to read them once for each station, once for each piece of infrastructure the Sovereignty had used to process and file and close 61 people as unclaimed cargo. When she finished the third reading, she gave the order. Station 3 took 23 minutes. They fought hard. There were assets in that station I hadn't fully catalogued, a second defense layer that wasn't in their public manifests, and we lost 4 more ships and 19 more people before the grid came apart. I logged those names too, and I kept logging while the processing core went down and the relay went dark and the master archive of the Valeth Sovereignty's Ceth Corridor catalog station network transmitted its last entry and went silent. I checked my secondary screen. Hull designation OSS 7441C, catalog status, closed. I filed a disposition entry of my own into our mission log, the one that would go back to the Admiralty with the full communications record. I noted the Ossian's catalog designation, the date of the Sovereignty's original entry, and the current date. I noted the names of the 61 crew. I noted the names of the 26 from the strike group who did not come back through the corridor. I noted the disposition of all 3 catalog stations. Then I wrote, record reviewed. Response complete. The Sovereignty's relay net stayed quiet the entire way home. I don't know what they said to each other once we were out of range. I know what their catalog stations said, which was nothing, because their catalog stations were no longer in a position to say anything at all. 61 people had been filed as an unclaimed remnant pending disposition. We disposed of it.